The Galactic Council, in all its infinite wisdom, note the dripping sarcasm there, had rules about warfare, pages and pages of regulations, protocols and conventions that every civilized species was expected to follow. No attacking civilian targets, no targeting medical vessels, no biological weapons, no this, no that, blah blah blah. And for the most part, everyone played nice. Until they didn't. Humans had been part of the interstellar community for just shy of 78 years. We were the new kids on the cosmic block, still figuring out which fork to use at the diplomatic dinner table while trying not to accidentally declare war by using the wrong tentacle gesture. Most species found us either adorably primitive or disturbingly unpredictable. Some, like the Vrax Hegemony, just found us annoying. You understand? Ambassador Locks of the Taraxian Republic explained to General Helena Frost, her mandibles clicking in what passed for sympathy among her kind. The Vrax have always been selective about which galactic conventions they choose to honor. Frost stared at the alien diplomat with eyes that had gone cold as the vacuum of space. On the holographic display between them, the wreckage of 3 medical vessels, clearly marked with the universal Red Cross symbol, tumbled silently against the backdrop of Proxima Centauri. Selective? Frost's laugh could have frozen helium. They targeted medical ships, evacuating wounded from a natural disaster. There were no military personnel on those vessels, just doctors, nurses, and patients. Yes, well, Ambassador Locke's antennae drooped slightly. The Vrax have claimed they received intelligence that Earth was using medical vessels to transport weapons. That's bullshit and you know it, Frost snapped, abandoning diplomatic niceties entirely. The ambassador's translator chip rendered the human idiom literally for a moment, causing visible confusion before correcting itself. Whether I believe it or not is irrelevant, General. The Vrax Hegemony has 27 battle fleets. Earth has what? 3? 4? 6, Frost corrected automatically, plus defense platforms. Still, Locke spread her forearms in a gesture of resignation. The Galactic Council recommends patience and diplomacy in this matter. 5,273 dead, medical personnel and patients would recommend otherwise, Ambassador. And that, as they say in the classics, was that. Vice Admiral Raj Patel clasped his hands behind his back, staring out at Earth from the observation deck of Lunar Command. The blue-white marble seemed peaceful from up here. It wasn't. The public is demanding action, said President Eleanor Chen from behind him. The Vrax have gone too far this time. Patel turned to face the hastily assembled War Council. 8 grim-faced individuals representing Earth's combined military and political leadership sat around a table that had been designed for more ceremonial purposes. We can't match them conventionally, Admiral Kowalski stated flatly. Not yet. Our new Thunderhead-class dreadnoughts are still 6 months from deployment. And by then, growled General Martinez, the Vrax could hit a dozen more targets. They're testing us, seeing what they can get away with. President Chen rubbed her temples. Options? We could try to get the other major powers involved, suggested Foreign Secretary Ndlovu. The Arcturians have no love for the Vrax. They have even less love for us, Patel countered. They'll send strongly worded communications to the hegemony and nothing more. Then what do you suggest, Admiral? Chen asked, leaning forward. Patel took a deep breath. Protocol Lazarus. The room went silent. Martinez actually laughed. A short, sharp bark with no humor in it. You can't be serious, Ndlovu said, his voice barely above a whisper. I'm deadly serious, Patel replied. The Vrax attacked our medical corps. They slaughtered healers. I say we show them what happens when Earth actually decides to send killers. They're imprisoned for a reason, Admiral, Chen reminded him. Yes, ma'am, because they're too good at what they do, too effective, too creative. He emphasized the last word with a sort of grim pride. And right now we need exactly that. The War Council exchanged uncomfortable glances. Protocol Lazarus had been established as a theoretical last resort, a glass-breaking measure for when all conventional options were exhausted. These aren't just soldiers who broke the rules of engagement. Secretary of Defense Williams pointed out. These are individuals who rewrote the rule book entirely. Some of the things they've done are precisely what makes them valuable against an enemy who doesn't play by the rules either, Patel finished. The Vrax think they have our number. They think we're soft, predictable. President Chen stared at the table for a long moment. How many would you release? 5. The best of the worst, you might say. Chen nodded slowly. Do it. But Admiral, she fixed him with a steely gaze, keep them on a very short leash. Patel's smile was as cold as space itself. With all due respect, Madam President, we're not going to leash our attack dogs. We're going to point them at the target and step out of the way. The Helios Maximum Security Facility was buried beneath the Olympus Mons on Mars, far from prying eyes. Deep underground, in a special wing reserved for the most dangerous offenders, 5 cells were being opened for the first time in years. Colonel Aisha Jackson stood ramrod straight, watching as the occupants emerged, blinking in the relatively bright light of the corridor. Welcome back to the land of the living, she said, her voice neutral despite the churning in her gut. You've been offered a chance at redemption. Professor Vivian Zhao adjusted her glasses, a gesture that would have seemed bookish and harmless if Jackson didn't know exactly what those brilliant eyes had conceived. Redemption? How delightfully moral of you, she chuckled. What's the catch? The catch is you help us or you go back in your cells until the sun burns out, said Major Donovan, the security officer flanking Jackson's other side. Next out was Commander Ezekiel Stone, his once regulation military cut now grown into a wild mane that couldn't hide the calculating look in his eyes. Who needs killing? He asked bluntly. No one said anything about killing, Jackson replied carefully. The third cell disgorged Dr. Felix Reyes, whose methodical approach to combat medicine had revolutionized battlefield survival rates, before he started experimenting with more aggressive applications of his knowledge. Someone always needs killing, Reyes observed cheerfully. Otherwise, why bring us out to play? From the fourth cell emerged Captain Zara Kwan, who had once commanded an Earth Special Forces unit before her tactics became too extreme even for Black Ops. She said nothing, merely assessed her surroundings with predatory efficiency. The last prisoner was perhaps the most normal-looking and the most dangerous. Colonel Marcus Drake had been Earth's most decorated tactician before his methods crossed from unconventional to unconscionable. He had defeated 3 alien armadas with strategies so brutal they'd been classified above top secret. The Vax, Drake said simply, not bothering with pleasantries. It wasn't a question. Jackson raised an eyebrow. How did you know? Drake's laugh was like sandpaper. Who else would be stupid enough to provoke Earth into releasing us? They're not what I expected, Admiral Patel admitted, as he watched the 5 former prisoners reviewing the intelligence reports in the briefing room. Colonel Jackson stood beside him behind the one-way glass. What were you expecting? Monsters? Raving lunatics? Something less, collaborative perhaps. Inside the room, the 5 were functioning with eerie efficiency. Zhao had taken over a holographic display and was modeling Vrax ship movements. Drake and Kwan were debating tactical approaches. Reyes had pulled up schematics of Vrax physiology, while Stone was examining their military command structures. That's what made them so effective, Jackson pointed out. And so dangerous. They're not mindless killers, Admiral. They're methodical ones. I'm still not clear on why some of them were imprisoned, Patel confessed. I've read their files, but you had to be there, Jackson said simply. Drake's phosphorus gambit against the Gorvan incursion, it worked brilliantly. Also left 3 habitable planets uninhabitable for the next century. Zhao developed a counter-agent to Xindi neural toxins that saved millions of lives, then weaponized it to target specific genetic markers. Reyes pioneered a trauma treatment that kept soldiers fighting even when they should have been dead, whether they wanted to keep fighting or not. And we're letting them out, Patel shook his head. We're pointing them at the Vrax, Jackson corrected. God help the hegemony. Inside the briefing room, the 5 had fallen silent, all looking at a display showing the destroyed medical vessels. Something had shifted in their demeanor. Admiral, Jackson said quietly, I think we've made a mistake. How so? We assumed they had no moral lines. That's not true. She nodded toward the group. They have lines. They're just drawn in very different places than ours. As if to confirm her assessment, Drake looked up directly at the one-way glass, as though he could see right through it. They killed healers, he said, his voice coming through the speakers with chilling clarity. We'll show them what war criminals can really do. The plan they devised was elegant, terrible, and unmistakably human in its creative brutality. The Vrax Hegemony has a rigid hierarchical structure, Drake explained to the War Council 2 days later. Their military doctrine hasn't evolved in 3 centuries because it hasn't needed to. They overwhelm with superior numbers, superior firepower, and absolute discipline. We can't match them on any of those fronts, Admiral Kowalski pointed out. We don't need to, Zhao interjected, manipulating the holographic display. Their strength is also their critical weakness. They can't adapt quickly to the unexpected. And we're going to be very unexpected, Quan added, speaking for the first time since her release. Her voice was soft but carried an undercurrent of anticipation. The plan has 3 phases, Drake continued. Provocation, misdirection, and hammerfall. President Chen studied the former colonel with undisguised wariness. Explain. First, we're going to hit 3 Vrax outposts simultaneously, Drake said matter-of-factly. Small strikes, but painful ones. We want them angry but not frightened, outraged enough to commit forces, but confident enough to be reckless. The outposts you've selected are all military, Chen noted with evident relief. Of course, Drake replied, looking genuinely surprised. We're not barbarians, Madam President. Several members of the War Council exchanged skeptical glances. Phase 2, Stone picked up smoothly, is where we send in the real bait. A small fleet, seemingly vulnerable, retreating from Vrax territory after the initial strikes. They'll pursue. Into a trap, Chen surmised. Into a slaughterhouse, Reyes corrected with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. But not how you're thinking. We're not going to destroy their fleet, Zhao explained. That would just make them commit more ships. Instead, we're going to educate them. I don't like the sound of that, Secretary Ndluvu muttered. You're not supposed to, Quan told him flatly. That's rather the point. Drake brought up a new set of schematics. The final phase relies on this. The Vrax command ship. Once they commit to the chase, High Commander Draz will personally lead the punitive force. It's their way. You want to assassinate their military leader? General Martinez asked, looking more intrigued than horrified. No, Drake said almost gently. We want to make him watch. The first strikes went exactly as planned. 3 Vrax military outposts hit within the same hour by lightning-fast raids that left their defense systems in ruins, but, conspicuously, caused minimal casualties. I don't understand, Admiral Kowalski said as they watched the after-action reports. We could have dealt much heavier damage. We're not trying to win a conventional war, Drake explained patiently. We're sending a message. We could have killed you but chose not to. Nothing infuriates a warrior culture more. He was right. The Vrax response was immediate and overwhelming. 40 battleships, led by High Commander Drott's flagship, the Inevitable Conquest, surged from the nearest hegemony stronghold. They're taking the bait, Zhao observed, as the small human retreat force began to fall back, seemingly in disarray. Of course they are, Stone laughed. The Vrax military doctrine manual might as well be titled How to Chase Fleeing Enemies for Dummies. On the strategic display, the human ships fled toward the Erebus Nebula, a dense particulate-rich region that played havoc with sensors and communications. The Vrax fleet followed, closing the gap hour by hour. They're completely committed, Reyes noted. No reserves, no flanking maneuvers, just straight pursuit. Predictable, Quan murmured. Boring. Drake checked the chronometer. Commence Phase 2. Inside the nebula, the human ships suddenly scattered in all directions. The Vrax fleet, momentarily confused, began to divide to pursue. Exactly as predicted. That's when the hidden human vessels struck, not with conventional weapons, but with something far more insidious. Deployment successful, reported the commander of the stealth vessel Chimera. All Vrax ships have been seeded. In the command center, Zhao allowed herself a small smile. Activation in 3, 2, 1. Throughout the Vrax fleet, tiny nanobots developed by Zhao based on Rhea's medical technology activated simultaneously. They didn't target life support or weapons systems as might be expected. Instead, they infiltrated the ship's communication networks. Channel established, a technician reported. We have full control of their internal communication systems. Put me through, Drake ordered. All ships, all channels. The technician nodded, and Drake leaned toward the comm. Attention, Vrax fleet. This is Colonel Marcus Drake of Earth. You attacked our medical corps. You killed our healers. Bad move. On the main screen, they could see the bridge of the inevitable conquest, where High Commander Draz, a massive, scaled humanoid with 4 yellow eyes, roared in fury. Human vermin, how dare you? Save the posturing, Drake cut him off. I'm not interested in your threats. I'm here to educate you. At his signal, Zhao activated the second stage of their attack. Throughout the Vrax fleet, every display screen, every holographic projector began showing the same images. The human medical ships, clearly marked, being destroyed by Vrax weapons. The wounded patients, the massacred doctors and nurses. We want to make sure you fully appreciate what you've done, Drake continued conversationally. So, for the next hour, these images will play on every screen on every one of your ships. Your crews will see exactly what kind of warriors they are, killing the defenseless, the wounded, those who were trying to help. I will hunt you down personally for this insult, Drotz bellowed. Drake's laugh was genuinely amused. No, you won't, because after the hour is up, we're going to demonstrate the difference between your kind of war crime and ours. On cue, Reyes activated his contribution to the plan. The nanobots, already integrated into the Vrax communication systems, released a carefully calibrated psychotropic compound into the air circulation of all ships, except the flagship. What are you doing to my fleet? Droz demanded, his rage giving way to the first hints of uncertainty as reports of strange behavior began flooding in from his subordinate vessels. Nothing permanent, Reyes assured him cheerfully. Just a little cocktail that temporarily enhances aggression, paranoia, and suggestibility while reducing impulse control. Oh, and it makes them extremely sensitive to the images we're showing them. You see, Quan explained, her voice soft but carrying, your warriors pride themselves on discipline and hierarchy. We're simply removing those constraints temporarily. On the tactical display, Vrax ships began to break formation. Several turned their weapons on each other. Stop this at once, Drotz commanded his fleet, but the communications now only worked one way. They could hear him, but he couldn't hear them. They can all hear you, Stone told the Vrax commander. But right now, what they're hearing is that you ordered the attack on helpless medical vessels and that you're proud of it. Some are deciding you're not worthy of their loyalty. Others think their neighboring ships are conspiring against them. Drake leaned forward. The effects will wear off in approximately 24 hours. By then, your fleet will have largely destroyed itself. The survivors will know exactly why this happened to them, and they'll carry that story back to the hegemony. This is dishonorable, Droz spluttered. No, Drake said, his voice suddenly hard as diamond. Dishonorable was attacking ships marked with the universal symbol of healing and mercy. What we're doing is justice, elegant, proportionate justice. On the screens, Vrax ships began firing on one another in earnest, brutal, efficient, methodical, just as they'd been trained to be. We could have deployed actual bioweapons, Zhao pointed out clinically, or set your drive cores to overload, or a dozen other approaches that would have left no survivors. Remember that. Your flagship will be unaffected, Reyes added. You get to watch, then go home and explain how a numerically inferior human force managed to turn your own fleet against itself without firing a single conventional shot. At last thing, Drake said, the recording of everything that happens here will be transmitted to every species in the Galactic Council. They'll all see what happens when someone attacks Earth's healers. We may be new to the galactic community, but we've been fighting ourselves for millennia. We know things about war that you can't imagine. With that, they cut the direct communication, leaving the Vrax commander to watch helplessly as his fleet tore itself apart. 3 weeks later, the Vrax Hegemony formally apologized to Earth for the tragic misunderstanding regarding the medical vessels. They paid substantial reparations and signed a non-aggression treaty with surprisingly favorable terms. In the Taraxian diplomatic lounge on Luna, Ambassador Lox found herself seated across from General Frost once again. "Your response was?" "Unexpected," Lox admitted, her mandibles moving in what humans had learned to recognize as discomfort. "Was it?" Frost asked, sipping her drink with perfect composure. "The Galactic Council is concerned," Lox continued. "The methods your specialists employed were unusual." "You mean effective," Frost corrected, "and precise. We didn't obliterate their fleet, we didn't destroy their worlds, we taught them a lesson they won't forget." "The recordings have spread throughout Council space," Lox noted. "Many species are reconsidering their assessment of humanity." "Good," Frost said simply. "The Vrax are a proud species, they will not forget this humiliation." Frost's smile was cold. "That's the point, Ambassador, neither will anyone else." Loxley's antennae twitched nervously. "Some on the Council are suggesting that Earth should disclose the identities and backgrounds of these specialists for security purposes." "Not going to happen," Frost replied flatly. "They're calling them your war criminals," Lox pressed. "The Council has protocols for dealing with—" "They're not war criminals," Frost interrupted. "They're our trump card, but the tactics they used were perfectly legal under galactic conventions," Frost pointed out. "No civilian casualties, no permanent harm, no destruction of habitable environments. They just exploited a psychological vulnerability." "Is that what you call turning a disciplined military force against itself, a psychological vulnerability?" "What would you call attacking clearly marked medical ships?" Frost countered, her voice suddenly sharp. Lox had no answer for that. Meanwhile, in a secure facility near the newly established Earth Strategic Response Division, 5 individuals were settling into their new roles. "I'm still not entirely clear on our status," Commander Stone remarked, as he examined the spacious living quarters they'd been assigned. "Are we free or just on a longer leash?" "Does it matter?" Dr. Reyes asked, already modifying the medical equipment they'd provided him. "We're out of those cells. We have work to do." "It matters," Captain Kwan said quietly from where she sat cross-legged on the floor, apparently meditating. "Freedom always matters." Colonel Drake entered the common area, followed by Professor Zhao. "We have our next assignment," he announced without preamble. "Already?" Stone looked surprised. "The Vrax situation was just resolved." "The galaxy is a big place," Drake shrugged. "Lots of problems that need creative solutions." "What's the mission?" Kwan asked, opening her eyes. "The Tellarite Consortium has been raiding human colony ships," Zhao explained, bringing up a holographic display, taking technology, supplies, and people. "Slavers," Reyes said, his normally jovial demeanor hardening. "Technically indentured servitude under their legal code," Zhao corrected. "But yes, effectively. And Earth wants us to—" "What?" Stone asked. "Teach them a lesson too?" "Earth wants us to stop the raids and recover the abducted colonists," Drake clarified. "How we do it is up to us, as long as we stay within certain parameters." "Parameters," Kwan repeated with a hint of disdain. "Like? No civilian casualties, no permanent ecological damage, no actions that could be construed as terrorism under galactic law," Drake listed. "But otherwise we have operational freedom." "Sounds workable," Reyes nodded. "I've had some ideas about targeted neurotransmitter inhibitors that could—" "Let's save the brainstorming for the planning room," Drake suggested. "We leave in 48 hours. As the others filed out to prepare, Admiral Patel stepped from the shadowed doorway where he'd been observing. "You didn't mention all the parameters," he noted. Drake turned to face him. "They don't need to know about the kill switches you've had implanted in our brains, Admiral. It would only create unnecessary tension." Patel looked startled. "How did you—" "Please," Drake sighed. "We're not idiots. Military protocol for dangerous assets is pretty standard. And you're—" okay with this arrangement? Drake considered the question. We understand each other, Admiral. You need us because conventional solutions would fail. We're willing to help because it gives us purpose and freedom, conditional as it may be. And if the kill switches were activated, they won't be, Drake said with complete confidence, because we're going to be extremely successful at solving Earth's problems without crossing those lines you're so worried about. How can you be so sure? Drake's smile was unnervingly genuine. Because we've all come to the same realization during our incarceration, Admiral. Our methods weren't wrong, just ahead of their time. The galaxy isn't the idealistic place Earth hoped it would be. Out there, you need people who understand how to fight without fighting, how to win without destruction, how to terrify without atrocity. Is that what you did to the Vrax, terrified without atrocity? Exactly, Drake nodded. We showed them their own monstrous actions, then gave them a taste of what real monsters could do. The difference is, we stopped, we showed restraint, we proved we were better than them precisely because we could have done so much worse, but chose not to. Patel studied him for a long moment. The Council is already calling you war criminals. Drake laughed. Let them. Names don't matter, Admiral. Results do. And our results will speak for themselves. One more thing, Patel said as Drake turned to leave. What you did to the Vrax. It was elegant, proportionate even, but I need to know. If they had destroyed more than medical ships, if they had attacked Earth directly, would your response have been different? Ray's expression darkened. You're asking if we'd have crossed those lines of yours in that case? He didn't wait for confirmation. Admiral, if the Vrax had attacked Earth directly, you wouldn't have needed to release us. Every human with a ship and a weapon would have become what you fear we are. That's not an answer. Yes, it is, Drake replied. Humanity has always had two faces, the healer and the warrior, the builder and the destroyer, the diplomat and the conqueror. We're not your war criminals, Admiral. We're just the specialists you call when diplomacy fails and conventional warfare would cost too much. With that, he left Patel standing alone, wondering if Earth had just gained a powerful new asset or created a problem even more dangerous than the ones they were meant to solve. In the end, it probably didn't matter. The galaxy was learning an important lesson about humanity. Attack our healers, and we'll show you what war criminals can really do. Across the stars, alien civilizations watched the recordings from the Vrax fleet's self-destruction with a mixture of horror and fascination. Military strategists studied the tactics. Political leaders revised their diplomatic approaches to the upstart human species. And in countless military academies, medical schools, and diplomatic training centers, a new lesson was added to the curriculum. Never target Earth's medical corps. Because Earth doesn't fight the way you expect. Earth fights the way you fear. 6 months later, an emergency session of the Galactic Council was convened. Representatives from 37 spacefaring species gathered in the great amphitheater on Centaurus Prime to discuss what many were calling the human question. They are unpredictable, insisted the Mysteroxian delegate, his fur bristling with agitation. Their methods defy conventional military doctrine. They are effective, countered the Nesdarian ambassador, her chitinous appendages clicking thoughtfully. The Vrax have not violated a single treaty provision since the incident. But at what cost? Demanded the Folian representative. The psychological warfare they employed was perfectly legal under council conventions, interrupted Ambassador Lox, surprising many who had expected the Taraxians to side against Earth. I have reviewed their tactics extensively. No laws were broken. Legal technicalities aside, said High Counselor Vrax of the Gemeron Collective, we must address the underlying concern. Earth's specialists, these so-called war criminals, have now resolved 3 major interstellar conflicts in as many months. The Vrax incident, the Tellarite slave raids, the Proxen border dispute, all without firing a single conventional shot, which should be celebrated, noted the Arcturian delegate dryly. Or would you prefer the charred planets and refugee crises that typically follow such conflicts? What troubles me, said the Draxian representative, is not what they did, but what they might do. If they can turn a fleet against itself, what else might they be capable of? The council chamber fell silent as the delegates contemplated this uncomfortable question. Finally, the eldest member of the council, the ancient Quarian philosopher-diplomat known simply as the Observer, spoke. For millennia we have watched species rise and fall, the Observer's translator rendered in a voice like rustling leaves. We have seen conquerors and peacekeepers, builders and destroyers. Humanity is not unique in having these dualities. What makes them remarkable is their willingness to embrace both aspects of their nature when necessary. They are dangerous, insisted the Mr. Oxin. Yes, agreed the Observer, as are all species with the wisdom to heal and the will to fight. We would do well to respect both capabilities. As the council debated long into the night, one thing became increasingly clear to all present. The galaxy had underestimated humanity. They had seen their medical corps, their diplomats, their traders and explorers. Now they had glimpsed another face, the face of a species that had spent its entire history learning the art of war from itself. And somewhere on Earth, 5 specialists continued their work, redrawing the lines of interstellar conflict, one mission at a time.